Hello everyone, my name is Haiying. I've often heard students say that they don't know how audio middleware works, so today we're getting started with audio middleware using the FMOD Unity integration. Here at the University of Tulsa, we do a lot of WebGL development. FMOD handles memory and compression much more gracefully than Unity's native audio, and it's a bit more approachable for web builds than Wise. So quick plug, if you want to deep dive on Wise, check out Intro to Video Game Scoring here at TU. Otherwise, this tutorial will go over the basics of FMOD. First of all, I'm assuming you have Unity already. We'll be grabbing the FMOD for Unity package, linking our project, and then I'll show you how to do Ambience, music, and C# scripting. First, go to fmod.com and click Get FMOD. You'll need a free account to access the downloads, and then we're going to download FMOD Studio at the top here. This is what we're going to use for our sound design and audio event setup. Next, you can either download FMOD for Unity from here and import it as a custom package, or you can download it via the Unity Package Manager. I'll show you how to do both ways. Whichever version you download, make sure it's compatible with your Unity editor, and make sure your integration version matches your FMOD Studio version to avoid compatibility issues. As you can see, you can also download it from the Unity Asset Store. You're going to add it to your assets from here if you want to use it from the Package Manager. Alright, now I'm going to open up a new project in Unity. The first way to import a package is you can just drag it in to the inspector here, and you'll get an importer. The other option, which I'm going to use, is I'm just going to go to the package manager, look up FMOD for my assets, and download it from here. While that gets started, we can go to FMOD Studio and also get that set up as well. I'm going to make a new project. And it's just going to look something like this. I'll save this as a project file. Now in Unity, once the FMOD integration is imported, it should get a pop-up, looks something like this. We are going to link it to our FMOD Studio project that we just created. And then I'm just going to go through the default setup here. Just follow the steps and you can read it for more details. If, in case you mess it up or you want to revisit this later, you can go to FMOD Setup Wizard. Now, before we get too deep into this, I do want to point out that FMOD has a lot of documentation, and in case something goes wrong, you can refer to this at any time to make things easier for yourself. Before we look at the project, you need to understand banks. As you can see, this error here is saying that there's no banks found in the project. In standard Unity, you use WAV files. In FMOD, Unity doesn't see your raw audio. Instead, FMOD bundles your sound and logic into banks. Think of these as compressed data packages. This makes it a lot easier to do audio controls and optimize storage. You can create separate banks for music, sound effects, or ambiance. This way, the player's browser only needs to download the audio data that it needs for a specific level, keeping your load time fast. So I'm going to get started by importing my audio tracks into here. And then we are going to create events for those audio tracks. I have a bird ambiance track, and then I have a music track that I created. Generally speaking, once you get these set up, you will have to add them to your Soundbank and create a build for the changes to propagate to your Unity project. I'm going to hit refresh banks in Unity just to make sure it's in there. And then just to triple check, well, we should be able to start using it now. In case it doesn't show up in here, you'll have to check the banks again. As you can see, the events showed up as expected, and I'm going to attach them to an object in my scene using the FMOD Studio emitter component that comes with the integration. You have tons of options you can use, or you can also call the audio via script, and we'll go over that later. For now, I'm just going to set up this audio so it plays automatically when the scene starts. And now we're going to look at our audio event setup. So there's two ways to do this. Either you can create a loop and play your track like so. And as you can see, once you hit the end of the loop region, it will go back to the beginning. But you might have also heard that had sort of a strange transition there. So to avoid doing that, we are going to create a transition marker at the beginning, and then another marker transitioning to the first marker that we made. And so when it hits that second marker, it will tell the audio engine to loop back to the beginning. And since this is my ambience track, I'm just going to crossfade it so that you can't hear where it begins and ends. Once it hits that second marker, it's going to go into the crossfade, and then you should see it pop back out on the other side. Now, moving on to the music track, we are going to start by setting it up as a music track. I made this, and as you can see, it is 90 BPM. If you are working with a composer, ask them what BPM they're using. And mine is also 32 beats, so I am going to put it at the end of the 8th measure because it is 4 beats per measure, and 4 times 8 is 32. You might notice that this audio file overhangs a little bit past the 8th measure, and that is because there is decay on the music, so it doesn't just end abruptly right at the end. And then to make this fade smoothly, as you can hear, it is a little abrupt. To make this fade smoothly, we're going to do the same thing we did earlier with the transition markers, and then the crossfade regions. That's what it sounds like. It does sound a little strange, and that is because you typically don't want to crossfade your music if you want it to have a seamless loop. So I'm going to remove this crossfade effect. And now we should be able to test it. And that sounds about right. Now we're going to build this, and the changes should have propagated to Unity. Before we see our results, let's take a look at what else FMOD can do for you. We're only covering the basics in this tutorial, but as you can see, there are plenty of other effects you can do. There's a lot of options, and you can edit almost all of these effects via script. So you can fully integrate the audio and make it completely interactive using feedback from the game engine. So just as an example, we can mess around with the equalizer settings. And if you don't really have a music background, you might not know why this is useful, but this basically lets you have complete creative freedom over how you want to mix your tracks. I'm just going to test out a few different effects here so you can see what kinds of things you can achieve. You can also randomize your audio. So for example, if you have footsteps, you can randomize it. Here we're going to test that a little bit. If you want to make, say, a lo-fi aesthetic soundtrack, you could use these filters to apply an effect that sounds similar depending on the kind of mood you want to set for your game. There's also these settings over here you can mess with. One last thing before we look at our results, let's take a look at this documentation. If you want to play a track via script, you'll probably want to use this play one shot, and they give you code examples on how to use it. You can store a reference to the audio event that's playing and apply effects or end it depending on what you need for your game. Now let's check out the results. FMOD also has this debug window. You can use it to monitor your resource consumption and the current state of your audio. FMOD can be really powerful, and it is also relatively beginner friendly. So that should be enough to get you off the ground and into the FMOD ecosystem. Remember to build your Soundbanks, keep your versions consistent, and don't be afraid to experiment with the mixer. Now go make some noise!